My name is Doreen Warren. I am the committee chair for bylaws, policy, and legislation.
Great.
I'm Whitney Williams, I'm a board member.
Good evening, my name is Emmanuel, and I'm a board member.
Tawana Grant, and from the Board of Elections.
And I'm Lisa Good, and from the Board of Elections as well.
Anthony Jordan, District Manager to the board.
Stephen Palmer is Community Coordinator to the board.
Okay, so I know presentations first. I just want to talk quickly about the Lincoln Riley Act with the board. Sorry, you guys. Did you guys review that document?
I did review the document, I agree with the purpose of the document, I had some edits to the language of the document.
Okay.
So I have sent those back to you, and it doesn't seem like we can vote on it today anyway.
No, I think because I'm missing. Can you pass me that email anymore? I'm gonna try to pop into immigration. So just to engage the whole table. Yeah, because 1, 2, 3, yeah, I should still want her 50-50 in the body. Just to engage the whole table. The Lincoln Riley Act is a federal legislation that is currently in the Senate. And it's certain policies we take positions for, against, or modification of policies. And the Lincoln Riley Act will make undocumented migrants who are accused of burglary, shoplifting, or theft over $100 mandatory detention. And so whether they're guilty or not is not a consideration, just being charged, even if the case is dismissed or, later removed, they will be in mandatory detention and deported, and that is unheard of. And so I wanted the full board to vote on it. So before full board can vote on something, it must be presented in committee and then presented at full board, which is our last Thursday. So we don't have quorum to vote on it, but I will look at the modified language. Overall, what did you think?
Overall, I think it's a strong letter. I think we have the points that you made about it being a overly punitive response that's going to increase jail population by 20,000, and the feds can't handle that anyway. The fact that it's unprecedented and there's no due process rights that are outlined in the law are pretty significant. So I think that in our community is made up of immigrants primarily. So it's pretty egregious, particularly for folks in our community. So I do think that we should take a stand on it, and that Senator Schumer should be encouraged not to vote.
Yeah, because it's already passed the House. AOC voted no. Richie Torres voted yes. And okay, so we'll do that. I'm going to try to pop into immigration tomorrow and see introduce it to them too. Go ahead.
Yeah, even on that note, I was curious to know if it'd be possible for us to send to Richie a letter.
Oh, that was
We're in disagreement with your voting, and yeah, it's not a reflection of what our community stands for.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I could modify and we can vote on both letters.
Yeah.
And overall and do that. And I'll introduce that to immigration tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's like actually taking a stand towards what our representative is actually advocating for, and it's how it's not necessarily in sync with what the community is saying. I think it's important to just say that. All
right, we got a plan. And that office comes all the time.
And with the existing letter, upon reviewing it, I was just like thinking, I don't know how useful this would be, but the idea of just adding, just the fact that there is an incoming administration that's like very pro all of this, and it's Republican. I don't know if it's important or if there's any weight to adding like the partisanship element of all this.
I mean, I think we can play with the language and we can I'll come up with a sentence and see if people oppose me adding that line. Because I tried it when I finished our street vendor project. I wanted to talk about Trump's in office, but I thought that would be too loud. Yeah. So I think I put something else for our street vendor project letter. But yeah, we can see if you want to how strong the position is going to be. Because sometimes, Auburn takes positions that are not popular.
Yeah,
I think being specifically partisan in a community board one letter would be more challenging. But there's definitely language we had about the way that this administration is coming with a more punitive approach that we disagree with as a whole.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So yes, now you first. I just wanted to get that over. Hi. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Sinette Wilson, a guest. I'm sorry for being late, and
No.
I do have to leave early, so this is my first ever community board meeting, and I was determined to make it, so
Okay.
I found your website,
Welcome.
found the calendar, and my policy as a committee I could get into. So.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Welcome, Board of Elections. So I wanted to bring you here. We obviously just had an election in November, and then we have a few elections in 2025. It feels like there's every year elections, and there have been some concerns that were brought up around number one, our early voting sites are getting further and further. It feels, and they're moving. Unclear. You guys are going to explain to us how they're selected and things of that nature. I know Mitchell. Public housing, their voting site was like all the way in Trent. Like, I don't know, it was like really far. I forgot the street. And I don't know how they move. Obviously, Bronx voter turnout is not the best. And so far early voting locations do, I think, play a role in impacting that. But I obviously don't know how much control you guys have over these things and how maybe our voter turnout impacts, both voter locations. Obviously, translation. Obviously, we have a very diverse group of citizens, but they also, all of them don't always speak English as their primary language. So, translation is really important and things of that nature. I just kind of wanted to give you a frame why, I requested meetings, guys.
Well, regarding early voting sites, it varies. It's very different.
I'm sorry, can you introduce yourself for the record so that we can have it, please?
So sorry.
Introduce yourself before you start for the record. So that
Oh,
we can
sure.
have it.
Lisa Gaddis. Board of Elections.
I'm sorry to interrupt that.
Oh, no problem. So for early voting sites, choosing early voting sites is very different than choosing election day sites. So for early voting sites, the criteria is extremely different. So what it entails is that it doesn't have to be in someone's direct neighborhood. It has to be in an area that services many neighborhoods, a wider variety. So there usually are 2 per district for early voting only. So per assembly district. So that's how it is. And so how they determine is they're looking at a number of different factors. Number one, they're looking at the number of voters in that area. Okay, and then being able to have it. How far is this one? Let's say if they choose 2 sites, just as an example, let's say they choose Lincoln Hospital and the courthouse. They can say within there is X amount of voters, and they would cover all of the community going east and west and that type of thing. So they're looking at a number of variety. How many are actually registered voters in the area? How many? What the impact of the actual area chosen is going to have on that community. So, and then lastly is the site itself. Is the site big enough? Because with early voting, it goes by area, not by like a regular election, which is specific to your ED. So can it cover an area of 50,000 people, 100,000 people, whatever the number is at that time for that particular area? Can it cover that? And what is the traffic flow? So the sites have to be bigger for early voting than they do for election day. And obviously they are longer. They're covering 9 days for early voting. So there's a lot of little factors that go into.
So when you say impact, like what are those things that you consider like impact?
Whether or not it is ADA compliant.
Of the building.
The building. Definitely for any site to be chosen, it has to be a site that is ADA compliant. Particularly because for election day, they can only vote in that specific space. But early voting, they can go, this one or this one, right? Or depending on where they live, they can go that one, or they can wait and go to theirs on election day.
So to be clear, I thought I have one place to early vote,
Yeah, you do.
right?
Yeah,
So
you
there's
do.
not like
But
I
a
can
community, your community has two places.
Oh, and it's things like public transportation accessibility considered and things of that nature.
Yes, whether it's on a route to get to, if there's at least one, then that's what's considered. So if
One
there's-
bus.
Yeah, no, it's a one route. It's like if there's a route, can the residents of that community get to it by bus, by train, or by walking? Those was considered.
Okay, and translation.
Translation. So, we call them interpreters.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. So interpreters, they take a class like all other poll workers. They take a class. Their class is 2 hours long. They have to fill out an application like any other poll worker, and they are for early. Again, the criteria for choosing people, poll workers that work for early voting is different than election day. So because early voting, we use a lot less poll workers than we do for election day. For election day, we hire almost 10,000 people to cover the 200 sites that we have for election day. But for early voting, we only have 24 sites. So that's a
200
lot.
sites in the Bronx,
Correct.
but only 24.
For early voting.
And that's always been the case.
Correct. That's actually gone up. It used to be less. Yeah. Yeah. And all 5 boroughs have to agree on that number.
So everybody only gets 24 early?
Correct.
So, I mean, and then translation, do you guys know like the demographic of the community to make sure there's like X amount of Spanish, X amount of French?
The only,
Oops,
yeah. So the interpreters are determined by the census, and the Department of Justice. They're not determined by the, who becomes an interpreter is determined by the Board of Election, but not the language. The language is determined by the census and the Department of Justice. So once the census comes out, we know, because we know in our communities, we have lots of other people other than Spanish speaking people or English speaking people, but they're not counted per se. So the Department of Justice says the 2 qualified languages or legal languages of the Bronx are Spanish and English, period. So our written materials and our, so the ballots and the written materials, like the signs that we hang up, are only in those 2 languages.
Can you just, thank you for sharing that information. So are you saying it's because our French speakers don't come up on the census?
Probably, yeah, so not enough of them.
Not,
None, like, I'm sorry.
go ahead, Nemi. Yeah, and then you guys, I'm sorry.
Tawana from the board. Not a lot of our languages,
Mhm.
but Spanish, which is weird. Because we also have now a lot of Bengali, which would be tough for us at work also. But it's not coming up in the census.
Correct.
So,
You don't know what percentage is the magic number.
No, we don't know, but the Department of Justice does, and the census does. You can ask them. Because they're the ones that determine it, and so they'll have a meeting with the State Board of Elections and say, here are the languages that are recognized, legalized, and you must have for each county.
You guys can ask questions.
Like in Brooklyn, there's they have in Queens they have Chinese as well, so they have Chinese language interpreters as well as English and Spanish.
Brooklyn don't have Haitian Creole?
No, they do not. They do
May I
not.
ask a question?
Well, okay, I'm gonna let the board ask questions. Yes, the public can ask questions.
Yes.
Okay, do you guys have questions?
How much of the redistricting process has impacted the work that y'all do?
That's a good question. It does impact us. Actually, we're about to go through another set very shortly. They call it a reapportionment, where they did some redistricting in June, and then they'll be doing some more before this June election. So it does impact because what happens is that the phone calls don't go to Albany. They don't go to, they come to us. We're in the community, right? So they come to us and they say, why is my poll site moved? Why is this happening? What's going on here? What's happening? And there's a lot of factors that go into that as well. So specifically, the one that you asked me about, where the two sites moved into PS 130, those two sites, like one site had, those two sites were in that particular case, there was something regarding the construction. So those had to move into PS 130 because they had low numbers as well. So say maybe, I don't know the numbers offhand, but if it's 400 or less people in one and a small number in another, they're merged together to make a new site.
So what would be, I know you said your name like 3 times
That's
already.
okay, Lisa.
Lisa, if you could really give us that number, because I think it's important that people understand that there's, first of all, I can understand for efficiency, we don't need to rent more spaces if like less than X amount of people show up.
Correct.
So I get the efficiency in it all, but I don't know if people know that. And then here's the question, what is less at the November election or less at primary? Because you know nobody votes in primary.
Right, which is again a problem for communities like ours.
Yes, but if you're
Okay.
considering the primary number, that's really not fair to us. They're considering primary number?
They consider both. Yeah, they consider both, but
It's like for the year.
correct.
So the primary numbers plus the general election numbers,
It's gonna make the new numbers.
it's gonna make the new number.
And then what, so that's one factor, and that's a very important one. But then what comes to the forefront is safety issues. So if there's a school or a site that is under construction, going to be under construction, or has something that has been deemed unsafe. One school had a part of a roof. They said it wasn't a roof, it was a landing, but whatever it was falling, right? It was leaning. So that school had to go. Now, the residents there were very upset in that particular district, not yours, but in that particular district, because they were very upset because that site had to move. Now, that site was split into 2 different sites. Some of the residents went across the street to another site. This is election day, and some had to go maybe 3 blocks over to a different site. Very upsetting for them sometimes. Sometimes that happens even in buildings that are residential buildings, but that we have poll sites in, like Fordham Hill Oval or things like that. So the residents of that building, they don't understand why they can't vote in their building. Because it doesn't make sense, right? Well, because that side of the building, or one side of the building may have had a collapse or something. This not, it impacts the Board of Elections, but it's not the Board of Elections' fault. We are told we cannot do an election at that site because it's unsafe. We're told, we're given 30 days, 40 days, 60 days, sometimes 45 days to find a new site.
So that's how much, I was gonna ask you, how early do people know? So that means, you go on that website, you put your little zip code, whatever, you put your house number, and then you're supposed to know where your voting location is.
Correct.
How early is that location decided? Or is it decided early, but it can be subject to change if they fail clearance?
Well, if you vote wherever you vote, it's already been decided. So you're already in
but
the
I'm
system.
just saying, okay, primaries are in June for city race, right? When do you guys pick those locations?
Oh, so like by April, March, May, but by definitely before then, yeah. At least, I can't remember the exact number, but I believe it's at least 60 days before the election.
Okay, I don't want to let you, because I know you have to leave early on another question.
I'm gonna come up here.
Okay, you should say your name. Again, sorry.
Sinette Wilson. So the numbers you referenced for language, those are the must-haves. is there anything that says a request couldn't be honored?
Yes,
If we say X number of people that speak Haitian Creole live in this area, can we have language services for Haitian Creole?
no.
No.
So what happens is that, I know, it's mind blowing, but what happens, what happens with that is that, so by law that they do that, so we have to put the resources that we have into those required languages only, right? So that's what we do. Now, if we have a poll worker, or several poll workers that speak English and say Haitian Creole, and they get to wear a badge that says, I'm a poll worker and I also speak da 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 da. Now that helps that voter who is also speaking that language. They're not an official interpreter, but they are a hands-on, a poll worker who can assist in that language. The difference is that any poll worker that wants to assist has to do it in a bipartisan way. So you cannot, the only exception is the interpreter. The interpreter can assist the voter alone because they're an official interpreter. A poll worker that just speaks another language that voter is speaking has to have somebody else with them.
That speaks the language?
They're supposed to, but they most likely don't have that. But they have to be of a different party. So if that voter is a Democrat, they have to have a Republican with them so that, and that person, if they don't speak the other language, then the one that does speak the language of the voter has to tell the other person, hi. So what she's asking for is she wants a clearer explanation of these instructions from the ballot.
So that person's effectively interpreting for two.
Correct.
For the person
Yes.
that's
The other party.
Correct. And so that is to make sure that that person, that poll worker is that everything's above board as much as possible. So everything is done in a bipartisan fashion for the safety of the poll worker and the voter. So that voter can say, well, she slapped me, she hit me, she took my ballot, she didn't let me vote, she wrote on my ballot. You have a partner there that's watching and no, she didn't. Or yes, she did. And that was crazy. But no, she didn't. More than likely is the no, she didn't. She didn't do that. She didn't touch your ballot. She didn't take that from you. Someone was standing right there with you and her. So that's the purpose of that. So that hopefully answers.
So comment now,
Yeah.
as a point of policy,
Mhm.
a provision for discretionary funds earmarked specifically for language services, since the budget is specifically limited to translation.
Because you cannot go over. Like, you understand, like, I understand the floor. The floor is what the census and DOJ approved,
Correct.
right?
Mhm.
We as a city and state could not be like, we're giving you more because we know there's like 5% Bengali people here.
Right.
They could not.
Right. No, because every poll site has to have roughly around the same number of poll workers. So we don't want to have extra poll workers in one site and they'll say, well, that's not fair to us. Over here, we need extra poll workers. So there's already a designation, and that's part of what is done before the election, a designation of how many poll workers are going to be at the site. So if a site is supposed to have 2 Spanish interpreters, 1 information clerk, 1 accessibility clerk, which is someone at the door, 14 poll workers at a table, like that. So that's a set number. And that number is also divided in 2, right? So if it's 2, one of those people is a Democrat and 1 is a Republican. If it's 14, 7 are Democrat and 7 are Republican, right? So we have to make sure that is always the case. I know.
Thank you.
I know.
Yeah, that is,
Yes.
I had no idea how chaotic it was.
Yes.
If I,
Yes.
just on the piece, again, about language interpretation, and so in the courts, there, in like Manhattan criminal court, there's 2 Spanish interpreters, there's 1 Chinese interpreter, like there's very limited, you have 1 person, and if you happen to have 4 or 5 people who speak Chinese that day, that Chinese interpreter is running to every single
That's
courtroom to
right.
appear. Now, if you're telling me nobody in the Bronx, like, if there's a Bengalese interpreter in, in
And
the whole
that's
Bronx
where we
area.
have our problems at
right.
election.
And we didn't try to
Do
encourage
they travel? Is what I guess
No.
what I'm getting to is that if there is a Bengali interpreter, maybe in Manhattan, because they have a higher census rate or something, and we need them in the Bronx, in Queens, right? And we need someone in the Bronx. We can't call over to the Queens place and polling site and say,
No.
hey, can you send that guy over here?
No, but what we can do is to have the Bengali poll workers step up to the plate, have a conversation with them about the fact that your community is coming out.
Yeah.
A lot of them are
Additional recruitment
new citizens, but they're not understanding the language so well. They can read and write it, but they're not understanding it.
Yeah.
So can you explain this to them? You took your class, you understand this stuff. They don't. So
Lisa, what I was saying is that, are you saying in the Parkchester area, when you guys are recruiting, you guys are trying to recruit, I'm assuming heavily Bengali workers there, because that's the least you can do.
And we've had success with students. So we have a whole high school student program where we recruit in high schools, and we get high school student poll workers from every district who work the polls right alongside the adults. So 17 and above. So we definitely encourage Bengali high school students to not only get their parents and their neighbors out to vote, but to also sign up and be registered to work. And that has helped as well.
I wanted to add about the number of translators. I got a call on election day in November that, similar to kind of what Whitney was alluding to, where let's just say, because there's this number thing. People maybe didn't show up for primaries or didn't show up last year, because what was last year? I don't even know what last year was for voting outside. 2023. There wasn't enough Spanish translators, and therefore the voting experience it was extremely long at the Dream Center. It was really chaos at the Dream Center. I was like, Teddy was yelling at me, because of the hold up to vote. Because if people now that I know this number, I don't know if people merged. I don't know what happened.
Well, last year was, November was a particularly special case.
It's presidential.
It's presidential.
Exactly.
Every presidential is like that.
Which is why, I don't know, it doesn't get special treatment.
Well,
We try.
Yeah.
We,
So we asked for what we call an exception report. With this, can we get X amount? So sometimes it's approved. In some places it's approved.
Can you explain to me what an exception report would be?
So if the mandatory, if the number that we're given is 2 per site.
2 interpreters.
Correct.
Okay.
Then the exception report, we might ask for 4 per site, right? And so, and they'll look at previous elections.
Which would have been 2023.
Right.
But I don't even know who ran in 2023.
But you'll see the numbers, I think that was governor, I'm not sure. But you don't see the numbers, obviously the numbers are not as high volume, right? The volume is not as high as in a presidential.
Right.
So when they look at that, and then we try to make them go look at the previous presidential,
2020, yeah.
right? But even that was not as hectic as this one.
So
in some areas the exception report was granted, and in other areas it wasn't, based on those numbers.
Okay, so one, they did allow you to consider presidential versus presidential.
Correct.
Versus 23, which was maybe governor, and it just wouldn't compare.
Right. And then the other piece of it though is recruitment. People go to class, they take their time to actually physically come to the class. They take their test, they pass their test, they get assigned, and then they don't show up to work. It's insane.
No, because you get paid for taking the class,
You
right?
get paid for taking the class,
So
and you get paid for working.
Yeah, they got half a
So Yeah, so
No,
that's,
they don't get paid
they
for
don't
the
get paid
class,
for
but they don't work.
yeah. If you don't work, you don't get paid for that class.
Tuesdays.
That's right.
It is a Tuesday.
It's
So
a
it's like,
Tuesday,
why
but they
would you
also
waste
said
your
they
time?
wanted to. But we don't assign them unless they say they want to work. So when we go through all of that, it's very disheartening to hear the coordinator, who's the site supervisor
That
on
no shows.
election day, say, "Oh, I have 12 people that didn't show up."
Mm.
What are you talking about? 12 people that didn't show up.
Yeah,
What do you
a
mean?
little bit different.
Yeah. What do you mean? Out of your 28 people, 12 didn't show up? How is that possible? All right, have you called them? Yes, I called them. This one said, no, their foot hurt. This one is this, they don't have a babysitter, whatever the case is.
Everything happens.
Everything happens on election day that they're not showing up. So that also helped create that bottleneck.
So this is the issue I need to understand. So one of the, for better or worse, I secretly love them, MTA.
Mhm.
They be like, you late, you 4 minutes late, someone else gonna sit right there and get on this bus.
Mhm.
Cause we ain't gonna have too much if it's any bottleneck in the bus, it's going to be traffic, people on the street,
Right.
not because you chose not to show up.
So that's a great question. So
Is
what
there
we
like a
have
pool?
are standbys.
Oh,
We have
we do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We ready for you. We have
Mhm.
standby workers. So for presidential, we had 300? 400 standby workers.
In the
This
Bronx.
last one.
No,
Yeah.
actually 500.
500 is what we
We
asked.
started with 3 and then we said,
Let's add up. Yeah, let's add
For
up.
their borough.
Per
Or
borough.
in
In our borough.
in our
Other boroughs
office.
did a different number. They might have done more or less.
They probably did more because they're a little bigger.
Yeah. But for the Bronx alone, we had 500 standby workers. That means they come to our office instead of going to a site. And when a coordinator says, hey, we need some more workers.
12, yeah, that 12 did not show up.
They're already divided by district when they sit in our office, in our warehouse. We have them sitting in the warehouse. And they're already divided by district. And we send them out in a taxi to go to the site.
Okay.
So we're spending money in that way too, which always gets us in trouble as well, because the focus becomes on us like, why is the board of elections spending this money? But we're trying to.
Well, you
build
have
the
to do
site.
that.
We have to do what we
trying.
can.
We
You
can't
have
tell
to do
somebody to come to us.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
you
then
have
we
to
tell
do
you
that.
to go to a
And
site.
I-
You
Spend
gotta
our
walk
money
the bus,
to
you
go.
gotta, like, that's a lot.
No, especially, no, you have to do that. So now my question is, hypothetical site has 28 people, supposed to have 28 people. You get the call from the coordinator, 12 doesn't show up. You're sending multiple cabs, because now you guys said 12 people, all of them not gonna fit one cab.
Right.
They're heading to whatever this place is,
Okay,
okay?
we're saying 6 cabs, 2 people per cab.
Yeah, you're sending all the people 6 cabs to one site, because you had 12 no-shows. And so this past November, that means everyone who had no-shows still got a new staff, a body.
Yeah.
You were able to fill the gaps.
For the most part.
For the most part.
For the most part.
Now,
Now,
500 standbys. I know
Yeah.
they're not gonna all show up
Right.
too, but like.
but we had 200 poll sites. So we have 500 standbys, 200 poll sites, and what happens is that while with the standbys, with the regular poll workers, they're almost guaranteed to get in their neighborhood, their area, their district. With the standbys, they're going anywhere we need them.
Yeah, so Park Chester can come all the way down here in my
Right, and they don't want to do that
I
a
can
lot of
understand you.
times. So sometimes right at the spot, they'll say, I don't want to go to Riverdale. You crazy? I gotta get back home by myself. I'm not going there. I'm not
Do it at
spending
9
that
o'clock.
money. Right, and at 9 o'clock at night, I'm not coming from Riverdale to South Bronx. I'm not doing that. So they'll refuse the spot right on the spot. They'll refuse the job. So that then becomes frustrating too, because then you have to scramble. Okay, you're right, you're out, we got another one here. Are you willing to go to that? Okay, great, boom. He's in. Put him in cab, let's go, boom. And so for the most part, we're able to fill all the gaps. But there's still gaps. There's still gaps.
Okay, so this is a lot for us. This is way more chaotic than I thought.
Absolutely.
Actually. Yeah.
So at one of our general board meetings, something did come up about the most recent election. And it had to do with a polling site in the district, where police were corralling people to create a line in a certain area, but like he was basically redirecting people to a place that didn't lead to the site, and so it really frustrated people. And so I'm curious to know, is there any sort of like communication between you all and NYPD, like any sort of like disciplinary stuff that y'all?
So disciplinary, no. But communication, yes. They're given a brief. Years ago, they used to come to a class that I specifically taught. They don't really do that anymore. They're giving
so
a
busy?
yeah, so busy, so busy, so busy. But what they do now is that they're giving a debriefing and a handout, the police, NYPD, on what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. Right? So it's a handout that they're given, and this is what you need to do, and da, da, da. And then when they get there, they're supposed to meet with the coordinator, who then is supposed to direct them to not only where they're supposed to be standing, right, but what they're supposed to be looking for and what they're supposed to be doing. And they're supposed to be assisting that coordinator in keeping the lines flowing, the crowd moving, and the disruptions to a minimum.
So the reason we brought you in here is because the goal is to get people to vote.
That's right.
And honey,
Yeah,
anything inconvenience the Bronx, when I get voter registration, they're not voting.
that's right.
Okay. Line too long at the early voting place. I ain't getting paid for this. Not enough translation. That is a huge issue. Now we have translation not in every language. Bottleneck here, bottleneck there. You losing 100 votes. You losing a few. You collect them per whatever assembly district, whatever the case may be. So my question is, what recommendations, right? So the community board's goal is to advocate for the community. Our goal is to make voting as streamlined as possible. I hear you guys telling us about some like literally DOJ limitations and hiring people who speak the right language. And, I commend you guys for focusing on students who speak Bengali. I don't know what we're doing about the West African community where they speak a lot of French. And then I don't even know the other alternative language.
We've got some cultural issues when it comes to that, because a lot of the dads in those rooms, and I speak to them because they come and they want to see where did their daughter go, what classes she's got to go to, what are you talking about, where is she working? So it's cultural. So we have to deal with that and say, here's the outline, here's what the class we're sending them to, here's the textbook, take it home, read it, ask me any question you want, here's my cell phone number, call me, all of that. And then let's talk about it. In fact, what are you doing on election day? Are you free? Do you want to work? Do you want to come in? Do you want to work at the same site as your child so you can keep an eye on her? Do you want to? Would it be okay with you if your wife worked?
Okay, so how can we help? Wait, I just want to say one thing about the police officer, because I want to know how we can advocate, right? Some of the stuff is above you. This DOJ census thing is mind blowing. You have to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, where one point is, how can we advocate in our capacity, city agency, still following state laws.
Correct.
I mean, we have representatives on all levels. And, our goal is to write advocacy letters to better empower the community. And before we can write an advocacy letter, we call you guys so we can understand the system. We had no idea how crazy it was, actually. This is a big surprise for us. And so that is really, I do want to say about the police officers, they really don't know what they're doing. I mean, one called police, you cannot call the police on me. They thought I was electioneering but I was like, the sign's right here. They're like, well, they're calling you because you're harassing, because we're doing like ballot initiative and information. They're like, they called us, so you have to go. I said, just because you called me, if I'm not breaking the law, I don't have to go nowhere. But I did notice that they were calling. It looked like there's somebody in headquarters at NYPD who knows all the BLE rules. I have no idea who they were talking to about this. But the book that you gave them, they're not opening the book. Okay, the binder you gave them, they're not opening the binder at all. And they think they can just kind of say stuff. Obviously, I'm a lawyer, so they realize you need to call somebody, she knows what she's talking about. But I really want to tell you, I don't know fully if your officers are reading the book.
I don't know what they do. I don't even know if they've been given a book these days. They're definitely given. They used to be given a book, and they used to have the same books at the poll workers, have all that kind of stuff. But they're not given a book now. They're given a flyer. Here's what you do. Here's what time you're supposed to arrive. Here's what you kind of do. We're not sure because they've decided they've elected training. That's right. They've elected to sort of keep their training separate
from you guys.
Yes.
We
So-
that. We can't do that. We can't do that. They can't feel separate. At least they're gonna say they had to watch the video. Like
Right.
everything else they do.
Somehow.
Yeah, but okay, now I see what's happening at the poll site. So we can do that. So any other recommendations on
Yeah.
areas you think we could be advocating?
Yeah, I think that it really, all of this stuff really, to me, really comes down to educating the public. Educating the public, because if the voters themselves don't know what they are to do, what is expected of them, like getting up and voting and coming out and knowing where their poll site is, knowing if they don't know any of that stuff, that's a problem in itself, because like you said, the line is long. And all things that they don't know leads to frustration and leads to a no-go. I'm not going. I'm not going to vote. Forget about it. It doesn't matter anyway. Da, 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 da. Whatever that can. We want to eliminate the noise, but we want to eliminate the obstacles to that.
I was hoping NYC, I forgot when I called you guys, I was hoping NYC Votes was here because I was at that same poll site. I was in Parkchester. There's like, we have new citizens who are excited to exercise this right. But this woman is Jamaican, so she spoke, but she had more questions than a poll worker is allowed to explain.
Correct.
And I could tell she expected more help. And, I could understand they couldn't give it to her. And then so she left and didn't vote. Right? She went by herself. And so then she didn't come with a buddy to
Right.
help her. And obviously poll workers are limited on what they
Right.
can do. And I don't really think there was a language barrier, but there was, like you said, not familiar with the ballot. And even the NYC vote, they come in a pamphlet. That's not what the ballot really looks
No.
like. The ballot doesn't really look
No.
like the flyer they sent. I think AOC, that's a problem. I think AOC had a table in Parkchester and she was like giving out coffee in the middle of the street, whatever. And that table had a sample ballot. And that was the first time people had actually seen.
Well, that's
Go ahead,
because
tell me.
a lot of times people don't look, because every election table at the poll site has a sample ballot.
Yeah, but that's the day of.
Oh,
You see what I mean?
yeah. So they can also go on, is it NYC Vote?
Because that is
And then
the
see the
template.
But they can also come into the office.
So that's what I was gonna say. Because when you talk about education, I would love, especially we got ranked choice voters, gonna be a whole mess.
So we got, over 1 million voters in the Bronx. So,
Yeah.
we don't want 1 million voters to
No,
come in, but we
But
want a
I was
lot
saying,
to come
if we're
in.
doing like a, town hall,
Uh-huh.
it would be nice to have a actual what you're gonna see
Yes.
early voting day / voting day, so they can
Yeah.
touch it, they can see it,
Yeah.
the front, the back, whatever.
And we have to be extremely careful, and we have to make sure that we have, I know it sounds crazy, but we have to have people who are willing, like your staff or, your board members, our staff, to make sure that nobody takes that ballot and then tries to use that ballot.
But doesn't it say sample on it?
It does, but, people still try it, and then it's still in something, even though once we catch it in the office, it's not counting, but they still try it.
What?
Yes, people do a lot of naughty things. And we
Maybe
can't.
like, I already filled this out. I'm not gonna fill this out.
I mean, I think that's what goes to their head.
So I'm
Yeah.
just trying this
So
one.
they're being
Right.
given one, they're like, no,
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, I already got
Let me
mine. I
just
got mine
hold it.
last week at the
We
town
just
hall.
hold it for
Yeah,
election
I
day.
got it
Yeah.
last week, yeah.
Wow. So many levels.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. So many.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you guys, Ramona's watching us.
Oh.
She is. She's like everybody. Hi, Ramona. But yes.
But yeah, I think that's the biggest piece, the public education, the voters' education.
And how early does the sample ballot come out?
When it comes out as early as the absentee ballot,
ballots, and that comes out as like 30 days.
something like that.
Yeah.
45, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Somewhere around that.
Okay. And then is there anything else? I guess recruiting. I guess you guys
Yeah.
know Ozzy's help with recruiting. I
Yes.
hear that. I hear that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't stop.
Yeah.
Applications come in, we process.
Yeah, they come in all the time and we process all the time.
Okay. All right.
And then really finding people who really want to do this job, right? it's not a volunteer job. They get paid
Yeah.
$250 plus $100 for class. That's a $350 check for 1 day of work.
And if you do reporting,
You get $250 each day
day.
of 9 days
plus a bonus,
for working election
$25
day.
each day if you work election day.
So that's like, almost a $3,000 check. And you work 10 days, you know what I'm saying? So,
And you get it like November 9th, like the
Get
day
it.
after the election.
no, you don't get
No.
the check then.
The
You
check?
get it, no.
Yeah,
You get it,
Process.
most
Yeah.
people get it before Thanksgiving,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a process because the city payroll, once we're doing data entry, right? Processing the
You
payroll
know what's putting all.
Right, and then the
everybody in
city
work.
is
Mm.
from telling us when the close date is and closing it out. And so everyone who's been data entry put into the system by that date is going to get paid by this date, like that. So, yeah, it's a lot of long hours, it's a lot of stuff afterwards.
Okay, all right, and then I just wanna ask about the exception report. So the exception reports,
That's internal with us.
yeah, when do you guys ask for them?
When?
Yeah, like did you guys already predict that 2020, like you guys knew it was presidential, so you guys acted them in advance?
Yeah, so in 2024, in advance of that, so maybe September-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around September.
You guys kinda already knew it was gonna be a hectic campaign.
Yeah, and so
Hectic
you're
turnout.
actually, you're looking at, it's a team. So, we're looking at past numbers.
Registration.
Yes, how many registrations have come in? How many new voters? How many qualified voters? How many active voters? All of those numbers are being considered and saying, you know what, we're going to need, or even the past issues. We'll need 2 more here, or like in Co-op City, Dry the Loop, where we have 2 more of almost everything. Yeah, so because that's the largest site in the Bronx, and so they need that on a consistent basis, but it's not in the system on a consistent basis. We always have to ask them for an exception report on them, even though it's something that is needed every election. Yeah, so the city does their numbers and they say, here is the expectation. It's always a low bar. It's always a low bar because all of these positions cost money.
I hope so. Hopefully we get 20, I mean, you guys gotta do better for a mayoral race. I think that's gonna be a very big turnout. When I was doing voter registration for presidential, everybody was talking about the mayor race and they were not interested in November
Right.
2024. They were way more interested in 2025
Yeah.
mayoral race and, and when the Bronx is excited about something, that is very indicative of something.
That's right.
So I hope, glad to meet all of you guys. Thank you guys for coming here. And we really appreciate it. And we're going to take your feedback and see how we can be creative in preparation for another election.
Yes.
Another election. Thank you guys. You don't have to leave, but we are going to the next discussion item. Yes. So talking about town halls, you guys.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll walk you out with you guys.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so Bill Forum is getting
want
blamed
the
for
books?
everything.
You want
I've
to
never seen anything like this in my life. So I was calling Bronx Defenders Policy Team and I'm figure out more stuff on I was playing with the title, but is bail reform the problem? And I think it would just be like a town hall that literally teaches people what is bail reform from. I would like to see a prosecutor defense of maybe retired judge. Because I feel like they're getting a lot of information about bail reform and crime from non-people in the courtroom. You know what I mean? Not like maybe like these television. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep in mind that June is rent choice voting.
Yeah, we know.
So, so that's gonna be different, changes, lots of changes. So poll workers are gonna have to, normally they're trained once a year. So the training that they got in the fall for November carries them over and keeps them eligible to work June. But now with rent choice, they're gonna have to come back in and do a refresher. Because ranked choice was 4 years ago, or how long?
Yeah, it was, yeah, last 2020.
Yeah.
2021 was the
2021, yeah.
was the first time we've ever used it.
Yeah.
That's something that we are thinking about with comms is just doing videos so people can understand what it means, what
Yes.
it looks like. Do you guys have old ballots from 2021?
The reason, but you can also just go on the Board of Elections website.
Yeah.
We produced a little interactive interface, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It helps people understand, like, if you choose this, what happens to this? If you choose one or more, what happens to this? So it's very interactive.
Yeah, so we were thinking about doing we have a comms committee
Mhm.
about doing some videos about ranked choice voting. Like, even though there's all these slots, you can just put one person's name, you can put two people's name. You don't have to put everybody's name. And like, so they can understand. And again, I think when they're touching the actual thing, even though this case is crazy that they're using sample ballots, but the more they see the actual thing they're going to use on early voting or day of or absentee, the better it is for their like preparation and education. But yes, we totally know that it's going to be a totally different thing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
You're welcome.
Yeah, because I was thinking like about like having these town halls just on top of just to educate the public. Because if they know what it is, I don't think we're doing good because then it can stay in our letter for like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't,
You sure?
if we write a letter supporting against and the average person that really doesn't understand what is happening, I don't know if we're very successful if we're only talking to the elected and not talking to also the community. And in Albany this year, there's gonna be a lot of like people are still going to the uniform. Like I was in a meeting and someone was like, I don't know, like a important person who has an important job in our community was like, we need to re-examine the uniform, and I was like, public intoxication has never been a billable effect. You know what I mean? So I know there's a lot of sick people in the community. There's a lot of people in the community. I don't like the derogatory term zombies, but I get the concern that those people couldn't be bailed in any circumstance. And so I was thinking, like, is bail reform the problem? Would be informative for people. And yeah, so that's something I was thinking. What do you guys think? And then, I mean, now in preparation for November, maybe we should have like a ranked choice voting education 101 form as well. But in conjunction with other organizations like CB1, in conjunction with yada, yada, yada. This is what my thoughts are. What about you guys?
It would be something that we're thinking about in conjunction with other community boards or
I actually,
organizations?
yeah, I was thinking about other organizations. So for example, I already called one policy team to see if they were doing something. And then they brought up something that was really interesting. They're like, of course we would do something, but community boards reach a wider range of members of the community than a public defender's office. And I was like, sure, we can run. But I also would love, not Darcel per se, but like someone from Darcel's office that could be both sides. Because I think even prosecutors know, like, no, we wouldn't. Because I've heard sometimes they're like, the police isn't prosecuting cases. Like the police would be like, they're not prosecuting the cases. And I think there's just a misunderstanding on what happens in the courtroom. I just think so.
You said a prosecutor, a retired judge, and who?
Defense
An attorney?
Yeah.
I mean, so my hesitancy is that I have some reserves about like giving any more air to this conversation because it is not bill reform. And I guess to my, like, bail reform is unlikely to be on the table again this year.
Discovery reform is on the table this year.
Right, but that's not this question.
Yeah, I was gonna like.
So I guess what's the relevance of having this conversation now with the community?
Well, I was at a district cabinet meeting and people were talking about so we should all know that there's this huge chaos in Clemente Circle of the Hub, Luigi Torres, Salamanca. A lot of our elected officials are in the hub all the time taking pictures and talking about this new drug. It's
Xylazine.
Huh?
Xylazine.
What's that?
It's the drug.
That's what they're typing?
Yeah.
But like there's this huge thing, and there's this idea that they're scapegoating, and I know it's a scapegoat bill reform, but I think we're constantly educating our electeds, but I think our own community members are not informed about these things. And I'm not talking about the panel's not for the elected to or whatever, but it's for like our own NYCHA resident, community board residents who live in all these homes. You know what I mean?
But have we heard from them that they believe that bail reform is the problem?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I'm in like hanging out with my community board members in a food pantry, and they're like, isn't it? And I'm like, I don't think you guys know what this means. And again, I think we're both defense attorneys, and I think we speak up and we do not speak to the community this way. Now they're attacking discovery reform, and I don't even know people. I was like, do they even know what that means? I'm the 14-year-old who got stabbed, you guys. Okay? You guys heard about the 14-year-old who got stabbed. I went to the comments and they're like, he has 87. I don't even know if the guy actually has 87. Bail reform, they're just letting everybody out. They're not arrested. Like, look at the comments.
Yeah, are they from community board 1 residents? That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm trying
Well,
to
they're from Bronx residents. The crime happened in community 1 for sure. And is the person who is, or I don't know where all the commenters live.
Right.
I don't know where all the commenters live. I concede that.
But I think I'm happy to have I do think that we should educate people on challenge on issues that are relevant to them, that are top of mind to them, that they don't have an understanding of. I don't know if bail reform is top of mind for our community board members right now. And so that's what my hesitancy is.
Well, there's a talk about the increasing crime in the community. There's no denying that. And I am telling you, every time they talk about increase of crime, they're blaming bail. What do you think, Emmanuel?
I'm curious to know, are there any particular organizations that have had a history of advocating for this stuff in the district?
Well, Bronx offender policy will 100% do it. And I think it's not even advocating, it's really a one-on-one education forum, which is why I would like everybody who usually is in a courtroom there to be like, when you are arrested, why are some cases prosecuted and some cases aren't, right? Because you have to filter, like in a perfect world, so you guys can understand. You get arrested. NYPD sends a letter to someone in the prosecution office. The prosecution, that means defense doesn't know anything yet. Nobody knows anything. Prosecution, like, does their little thing. In some of the cases, they decide they're not going to prosecute and they get thrown out. NYPD doesn't like that, but they want all their arrests to turn into a case. Until there is a case, then you meet defense counsel, right? And some cases are just tickets. So if you're walking around with open bottle of liquor, you're not going to get arrested. That's a violation, right? And so some people don't even know what's a violation and what's a crime, what is an arrestable offense, what's not an arrestable offense, where does bail even come in, And I think, and then somebody says the judges can't even consider your past records. You guys, like a real person, like not even our peers, like someone who's advocating for the community. It was like, I heard judges can't even can't take your criminal history. That's not true. Like all of the first thing you get at arraignment is someone's rap sheet with every single crime they've ever done. And there are times they can consider that. So I don't feel, and I think communities can run with its discovery now is what they're going to start pushing, because we haven't taught them that. And if you don't have family in jail or whatever, you don't know what's going on. It's easy to tell you whatever.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like more like just trying to figure out like if there's any like grassroots organizations that are doing active advocacy work, that are doing base building, like getting people who are directly impacted, bringing them together, and like if they're like the ones like taking a stand up against Richie Torres, Salamanca, and all these other people,
Yeah, I mean,
like I think about On Point.
I love On Point.
I don't know.
No, I love that. I mean, I thought the guy was the thing we had, but what I want us to make sure we're doing as policy CB1 generally is that even though we're writing advocacy letters to our elected officials, we're also keeping community board members. I can do that in a general board meeting when I introduce and do the presentation, but the community at large. You see what I mean?
The thing I worry about is that like if we were to have a town hall, what happens after that? Like where does the organizing live?
So when we write our letters, right, that is our advocacy tool. But I think twofold. I think educating the community is also important, like on basic level. You need to know before you can have a position, you need to know all the facts. And I think we're giving people positions without teaching them all the facts.
For sure, there's gonna be people who are gonna be educated and they're gonna want to be moved into action.
Okay.
And then,
Okay,
is that our role?
well, that's I didn't think about that. Like I'm thinking that's a one-on-one. I think what you're telling me, Emmanuel, is like, so there was a panel by the borough president's office I sat on called Reimagining Police. There was an advocacy group there. There was Life Up, Guns Down was also there, and we can talk about inviting those advocacy groups, but for us to be not partisan, but to give a general presentation, and then we can promote the advocacy groups that will be there and invite their people, I think. You know what I mean? I think it's a one-on-one, but I agree, Bronx Defender can be like, these organizations go with us in Albany and fight, you know what I mean? And they're in the room. I mean, when I moderate the panel, I can be talking about like the people in the room, you know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I just think that I'm unsure whether we should be the ones like
To educate the community.
like jamming the spear, you know what I mean? Like it should, like we could be the ones like supporting and saying, yeah, we can support y'all in doing this town hall. You know what I mean? As a community board.
So okay,
It doesn't seem like you're going to be presenting it's in a policy neutral way, is what you're saying, right? Like you don't want us to come in and say bail reform it's not bail reform, and these are the people who will explain to you that it's not bail reform.
See,
I just want to clarify. Is that what you're getting at? That you don't believe that the board should be taking a position and trying to push that on, not push that, but introduce that position into the community in that way?
I mean, it would put us in a position where it's like, it's us versus Richie. It's us versus Salamanca. It's us versus, like, you know what I mean?
And that is so perfect. And that's why I want to get out of it. So we just talked about ranked choice voting, right? I asked them, do you have a sample ballot? And that we should have a town hall teaching people how to use the ranked choice voting ballot. We are not going to tell you who to vote on in the ranked choice voting ballot, but we want to make sure that people are familiar with the ballot before they get to the booth, right?
Yeah.
That is it. When I tell you to vote, you can't do that. And that's kind of how I feel about certain topics. Before someone tells me how to feel about it, I want you to understand what happens when people get arrested, when police officers stop you, which ones goes here, which one goes there, which one says fail. So therefore, when someone else tells you something, you'll be like, no, that's not really how it works, right? So I do think our job is to educate in an objective way, and then organizers organize. But before you can take a position, you need to have an objective information about it. Like,
I think you need a cop on that panel.
well, they don't throw the prosecutors on the bus, they don't cost the prosecutor. I mean, of course, you can have a cop on the panel, it's fine. You can have the neighborhood police on the panel. I actually like the 40th neighborhood police guy, surprisingly. I really like the guy.
And I think if
Really
you have
nice.
a panel and you have the police saying that, look, we pick up as many people as we can, or that we
Okay.
can't, like to start from, because I think you're right, that people need to know what the whole process looks like, and having everybody talk to that point, because otherwise you'll get the other three people blaming the police. And I think that we don't want that either.
Okay, so yeah, I don't want anybody to blame, okay?
So
So I don't
you're
want,
pointing here.
we're not finger pointing, so then we have police officer, defense, prosecution, retired judge, because I think if they're on the bench, it's part of that. Yeah, so I think police officer, prosecution, defense, retired judge, and, I want an attractive title,
I mean, this is provocative. It will get the people going.
get the people to come. It'll get the people to come. But I do think, I agree with you. I believe our job as a community board is to educate. Because what happens is, when you don't know, a lot of people can manipulate you to believe what they want to believe because you have such a shallow understanding of the facts. You know what I mean?
But we also have to be prepared that there's going to be people there who are going to be like, yeah, have bail reform, and
Exactly.
and we're going to have to hold that.
Absolutely. Just like we have
And-
people here, we have people on our board who are Republicans and Democrats.
100%.
Yes.
But it's like, this is the forum we're opening up, and we're going to have to moderate
But that's the
And-
value, I
and-
think, in a town hall,
And
right?
people are gonna, 100%. And then there's gonna be people who are gonna want to move into action. And I do feel like we will hold like some sort of responsibility to like what happens next, because they are coming to an event that we curated.
Well, we are co-sponsored. We will have other organizations' names on it.
This is why, like, I think us supporting an organization that
'Cause I'm-
really spearheaded
Well, the thing is,
might make a lot more sense.
it's so crazy because organization thinks we have the community reach. And because everyone is if I'm an advocate, then I have the bail reform team with me. And if I'm anti-bail reform, then I have the anti-bail reform team with me. I need all the teams to hear the things. You see what I mean? Because I got my team, you got your team, but CB1 is
Neutral.
community. That means the Republicans are with us, for bail, anti-bail, more police budget, no police budget. Y'all all live in CB1. You see me? Y'all all live here.
And I
Y'all all live here.
And I think we can also, like, yes, we have a responsibility to let people know that there are things that they can do about it, right? Like, if you agree with if you now understand what you're doing, you have additional questions, or you agree with what we're doing, these are organizations or people that you can talk to, and vice versa. I don't think that, and also because this isn't the position that CB1 is, or I don't think any community board is traditionally taken, where they would hold an organizing space. Like, I don't think I think education makes sense. Advocacy is definitely not I agree with you there, it's definitely not the realm that we want to stand in, but it will be, I think, to your point, Devorny, up to us to point people in the direction where they can find additional information or connect with other organizations or groups that are doing this work.
And this is rooted in the fact that I think I'm in many rooms where I think our community wants change. We want the drugs to stop. We want the violence to stop. But because we don't really understand all the parts, we can't even advocate for ourselves accordingly, right? So I'm like, there's a whole conversation about syringe littering. Syringes are everywhere, syringes are everywhere, syringes are everywhere. And I think the answer is very simple. I talked to somebody in the Department of Health. I said, you guys certify all these places, Samaritan Village, yada, yada, yada. There's about 20 of them in our district. All of them can be in charge 4 hours a day to pick up syringes. You need to fund them to pick up syringes, keep a calendar of their syringe pickup so nobody's like overlapping each other. And we can pick up syringes. If there's 20 organizations or just 10, there's 40 hours of syringe pickup we can have for an overwhelming amount of syringe pickup for one day. That was do 4 hours. We have multiple people, in an hour because there's so many organizations.
They should pay them for syringe return.
They already offered that. I thought that was dangerous. No, he brought up the idea. I thought that was good. I thought it was dangerous. I don't want anybody picking up syringes, but
If you don't use a syringe, you can at least
pick it up like a can. But here's the thing: if we know that more police can only get us but so much,
Okay.
then we would start talking about DOH, syringe pickup, sanitation. You know what I mean? But I think everyone. I don't know. For some odd reason, I think the miseducation has consumed us. That NYPD is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, or the criminal court system is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. These are why I think this is the hope I get for education.
For me, it's more like making sure that there is like a grassroots organization really spearheading this. That's like
If Emmanuel, a grassroots organization spearheads it, that means we took a position. You see what I mean? It's not neutral because grassroots organizations are not neutral. They're pushing for a movement.
When they're coming in with their agenda.
Yes, exactly. So we want neutrality with a handoff. I believe in the handoff.
Mm-hmm.
The handoff meaning we can have grassroots organizations are going to be in the room and they can be talked about like this is, we advocate for this and we advocate for that. But a grassroots organization leading it, it's already taken it up immediately. And if we are doing the education one-on-one with a handoff to the grassroots organization, then I totally like an invitation. The Reimagining Police did tabling before the panel, and all types of organizations were tabling before the panel. And they were outside, passing out stuff, and then the panel happened.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I definitely see your point. I do think that like we should talk to On Point.
Oh, I love them. I feel like
and frankly, like I think we should. If we're talking about who's going to be on the panel,
Yeah.
like it should be like someone who's a member of On Point. who perhaps does work and hangs out in the hub.
Okay, so let me pause and say this. I think we 1,010%. I was even telling the BP's office need to have a town hall dedicated to drug usage, right? But if the town hall I'm just trying to do right now is trying to explain the criminal court system, right?
Mhm.
Where they keep on throwing, but drug, I'd love to have panels like they are not zombies. Like, first of all, stop using that term.
I mean, these are the people who are being scapegoated.
Yes.
And so, like, directly impact
Yes.
the people actually speaking rather than being, like, shown.
Absolutely.
I think that's, like, what I'm going for.
Absolutely. But I feel like that's a different panel, which I'm not opposed because I do think policy needs to do more education of our letters. I think, we did a street vendor project letter. We have this Lincoln Rally letter. I'm hoping we get a TOPA letter. We're going to get a health provider. CB1 hasn't been pushing out all these letters, right? Like, I'm writing letters. We're going to write a letter to Chuck Schumer and maybe Richie. So we're getting our letters out, but I don't think we're doing enough to educate the public. And I do think there could be, just like I want a ranked choice voting thing, I think a panel dedicated to the people who are using and how addiction works is important. And that's where On Point is honestly, that guy needs to come. He needs to be on the panel in particular. And Drug Policy Alliance needs to be on the panel. But what I want to introduce in 2025 is twofold as we put pressures on our elected officials and educate the public. And then what I hear you saying is, I hope the education of the public organically causes them to organize, because they're organizing right now. Every time they complain to their people, that is a form of action. I just want to make sure it's really informed. And then I agree with you. If they want to work with another group, we want other groups to do there. So maybe we do just like reimagining the police, tabling before. But I do think drug users, drug addiction is a different town hall than the 101 of the process, right? Because 101, that's a legal standard, discovery is illegal, but the drug user and the drug solution, maybe that's the name of the panel. And then just like I want to work with police officers, defenders, retired judge, and prosecution, that's one thing. But like you said, who is the drug user and what is drug addiction? That having On Point and someone who's formally, that meeting we had till this day, I was telling the public advocate office, watch that YouTube meeting. It was fantastic. It was such a good meeting, and bringing that to the masses is, I think, good. Don't get me started with that. It was a long story because he also was at the hub. Everybody's at the hub, taking pictures, getting a tour. And I'm like, you guys are not talking with the solution people. It was crazy. So I think that could be 3 town halls and 3 things we're working on is 1, ranked choice voting. We have to teach people this. Next month's meeting, we can talk about next steps. I don't know what we're going to do with DOE because they got a lot of problems over there. I don't really know. And some of it is above them, but people were really nice. So those are the things I'm thinking about. And then the last thing I want to say, is there anything else you guys want to talk about in new business to work on in 2025 for now? I mean, it's going to be a crazy year, you guys. So hold our horses. But anything else that before it becomes things exploding, is anything that I really wanted to. That's it.
It'd be good to see what are bills that our councilwoman is championing.
You know what? I had told this to Anthony before, and just inviting all of the legislative staffers of the various offices, and that hasn't been done. And I think I can work with Anthony and Steven in trying to get as many of them as possible. I don't know. What do you guys think we should do? State versus federal, or all of them in one room?
City and state.
City and state, and then the federal people come in a different meeting.
Wait, are you asking for just as they introduce bills or as they take leads on bills to just be able to identify that and track them? Or are you asking for them to come in and explain their positions on votes or those types of things?
I'm just saying any bills that they're particularly championing.
Yeah, I think for example, I saw in Chantel Jackson listed the bills she was
She'll co-sponsor.
that she was co-sponsoring, and because it just started, right? Session just started.
I know that in the case of Diana Yala, she's championing the Commercial Rent Stabilization Act. for commercial
Spaces.
spaces. And so,
I
you know,
think,
and I know that there's some barriers there because like that's more of a state thing.
yeah, oh,
And so it's like,
I know there were some barriers there. I didn't know what there are, but that's what I thought we would invite, if not a person, but they all have like a legislative staffer, and we could meet with them and just ask them what they were championing. Like we can one introduce ourselves as a committee to them because every CD doesn't have a policy and legislation bylaws. So I can get the word bylaws out there. And so we can meet them, and so we can meet it's Salamanca's office, Ayala's office, and then there's 6 people, 2 assembly and 2 senators. There's 6 people. I think it's gonna be harder for city council because both of our city council members are out. But I think it'd be easier for state people. Both of them are in transition, so I don't know if it's easy, but I think it'd be nice to meet them at least.
Yeah.
And to see what they're working on. And if we have bills we know we want to champion, we can also express that to them that we're interested on and just see what our positions are. It'd be nice to invite at least the 4. The state people are going to be easier than the city people because they're both going to be campaigning or endorsing other campaigns. One is campaigning for sure. Okay, so I can do that. I can add that, and then old business, you guys. Go ahead.
With new business, I mean, I don't know how to go about even saying this, but like I think something should be said about like these fires across the Bronx.
So who do you want us to call in? So one is it FDNY you think, or is it Department of Buildings?
I don't know what the reason for the fires are.
So
Maybe it's an investigation with FDNY, right?
Yeah, FDNY has to investigate every fire, but they be taking months to get
No, for us, like, can we talk to FDNY and understand why these
for
fires
us,
are
we can
happening
talk to them.
before we do? We call in the Department of Buildings and say, why has there been an underinvestment in these buildings such that there's electrical wiring problems or whatever?
Yeah, I think there's information out there as to the reasons for why these fires are happening.
Maybe we need FOIA requests instead of inviting FDNY.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I think it's like very clear that like people are like connecting space heaters because
So
there's no heat.
that's what
I
again.
mean, that's like what's everywhere, all over.
Actually, O said, first of all, I think the conclusion, first of all, the fire from Kingsbridge yesterday, I don't think there's a solution, but I do hear that there's an increase of fires in buildings because of what Emmanuel says. Landlords are cheap. They're not turning on the heat, or they're like pretending to turn on the heat, whatever. And then people use space heaters or their ovens.
I'm from the South and I'm like, yeah,
They use the oven to stay warm.
No, but like, there's like a whole track record of this. Like, it happened in the Michelama building a few years ago with the West African community.
Oh, that building was a space heater.
It was a space heater.
Oh, that was crazy.
Now it's this over on Allerton. Now Kingsbridge. Next year's gonna be another one.
Okay,
Hopefully
wait.
not, but
No, like it's a pattern, obviously.
for sure.
So who would you like to speak to about that? Is that an HPD thing?
I would presume.
Housing preservation, it depends, when you do a 311
Housing
complaint
preservation
that your
as well.
landlord is not like putting on the heat or something, I think it goes to them. I have had someone I spoke to don't understand how HPD complaints are investigated or processed.
Mhm.
Well, listen, Emmanuel, I can't do all the things. You need to Google what agency you think is supposed to solve the problem.
That's a know your rights training.
Well,
For HPD.
well, first of all, we don't
Yeah, people
understand how
call
they work.
311.
We can do a know your rights training for HPD, but should we call HPD and understand what their rights are? Because we call BOE, I didn't know they had all this stuff going on. I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I'm fine doing the know your rights training with HPD, but I think we need to call HPD to make sure we understand it. Do we have an advocate who understands this stuff? You have an organizing group, you call HPD and the organizing group on the same day.
I mean, más que nada, don't be. I mean,
But, okay,
I don't.
You're gonna take the lead on that.
You have to Google it. Why will we shout out to the team? They will call any agency for us with the right questions.
Yeah.
But because I was with them calling FDNY, but if it is the space heater, which I hear is a pattern issue,
Mm-hmm.
and I know if your landlord doesn't put it on, you're supposed to call 311, but I heard the 311 investigations are like really not done well. I don't know if HPD is understaffed or I don't know where they go. So I have some questions about that.
Yeah, historically HPD has always been understaffed.
Okay, that's it. I didn't.
But more so like DHCR, which is like the state.
Oh, I thought all they controlled was the rent increase. They also control.
They also like they do some sanctioning of landlords too if they don't comply with things.
So I think for us, the starting point is the HPD. That if you have other suggestions, we start off with that. Because once we know that, then I agree. I don't like when any part of the community board meets with people and we don't do a next step, right? I feel like there's no follow through or conclusion or whatever. And so there is a huge fire issue. This is super sad. Red Cross, like, I don't care if you lost just a water bottle, it's sad. I'd be sad. I lost a shirt once and I'm still reading it. So I think we need to do something about the fire, and I'm all about educating it. And if it's HPD that is not listening to complaints, because we can easily figure out soon how many 311 heat complaints will be.
Yeah, for the buildings that are burned.
For the buildings that burn, how many 311 heat complaints were from those buildings? So I think we can start off there and then HPD. Okay, so anything else? HPD. Heat complaints. I want to know if someone tracks those per building.
It's probably an open data thing.
Okay, anything else before we get to old business? All right, old business, the bylaws. There was a whole question with in this disaster. There was a question about whether someone if someone on a community board came to our meetings, committee meetings, could they count for,
No.
what's that thing called? Quorum. The answer is no. I literally made them pull up all the numbers to show me the work, but there's this document, and the answer is no, because we follow the same rules as city council.
Why did someone think that would be okay?
I did.
Did you?
100%. I went balls in for it too.
Girl.
And I was like, no, you can't. So even though they're on the community board, they
On
can.
a community.
No, ours. So like if Leslie came here, you guys, right? Leslie's name is not on here. Leslie cannot help us meet quorum. And that is why I need Naisha, who is stated that she's not interested in being our committee, to be removed, because then we would have had quorum, right? It's usually the four of us, so we always make quorum because Ramona's usually here. But Leslie couldn't help get me to quorum. Nobody else could get me to quorum, but the people on this list. And so I thought if you were on CB1, you should count towards committee quorum. And the answer is no. And so now the bylaws have no outstanding questions and can be completed. I do want an exception if Ramona is too sick. She gotta get listed. Anyways, I have some ideas, but I can talk to you, Whitney, about that offline. But at least I have the rules now. TOPA and treatment provided letters. I know we started TOPA in like what year last year? I think we should just write the letter. I think for me, even if the law dies, if the board takes a position, we can just renew it whenever it passes. So those are the two letters I'd like us to finish. I think I edited the treatment letters. And then the TOPA letters. And those are the two letters. I did the street vendor project letter just today, you guys, so sorry. But I finally finished that, and the board is going, I think Clarissa has to sign it, and that will be out. And then the Lincoln Rally, we've already had some edits, so that's gonna be ready to go. And that'd be nice. In the new year, we hopefully after these two letters, we'll have 4 letters already out. And that'd be fantastic. And then we can talk about maybe, you think we should throw a syringe pickup in this letter?
Well, I think hours of operation
It's
is
too,
allotted for that, right? Like we've said that the reason why they can't is like drug use is rampant overnight. They don't have the people, the staff to pick up syringes overnight, and that's why I think kids are waking up to syringes
Pick up,
So
as long as we explicitly put funding for extended hours and syringe pickup, I was telling the Department of Health, we need to be a good neighbor. Syringe pickup and escorts, so that's it. This was a great meeting, you guys. We're doing fantastic. I hope we've already earned to letters, and hopefully we have 2-3 town halls about things. And we created a new committee. You guys are my favorite members, and Ramona. We created a new committee. We got letters out. We're gonna inform the community. We're doing such great work. So it's 7:40, and can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I, Whitney Williams, move to adjourn this meeting.
Okay, anyone second the motion?
Second.
All, and yays?
Yay.
Okay.
Before you leave, I have popcorn.